Yeah, that happens. Hi. I am Reggie.
And I am Brian. And this is R&B Talks. I apologize for my voice, Reggie, but apparently all the tree pollen in the world is up my nose.
That's quite discomforting.
It's disheartening because I sneeze and cough and hack because I have allergies.
I am just hitting everything over here, dude.
That's okay, man. Hit it, dude. My mic is all swaying. We just got to get ourselves settled. We're all wild, bucking around and acting crazy.
That's not our usual day, man. You're throwing off our chi.
I know. We'll be back Saturday to our normal day.
Throwing off our chi, man.
I got no chi, man. I'm chi-less.
Chi-less.
I'm chi-less.
It's like a cheetah, but without the speed.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a slow cheetah. Anyway. How was your week and a half, Reggie? Oh, there's a new way to ask it.
Last week was it's always a good week, man. If you're able to get around, do things and taking care of business and stuff, I mean, it's good, but you know.
I heard you were in the backyard kung fu chopping trees down.
I finally got out for a little while on this weekend and did some stuff, and that was fun.
Yeah. That
was a blast.
It's always good to chop down trees and be like, I kick your trees.
Well, and I don't so I'm not cutting it up for firewood or anything. Yeah. So I usually the pieces are probably a lot bigger than what they should be when I'm trying to lift them up and stuff.
Fair enough.
And I still think I'm He-Man. So they're way bigger than what they should be. And I'm like, I got this.
Did you pull out your sword and say by the power of Grayskull?
I wanted to, but I pulled out the chainsaw and said,
okay.
That,
Fair enough.
But yeah, very sore. I went out again. I've actually been outside every day since then, though, to do something here, something there, which is what I want to be able to do. That is what usually keeps me with moving and, muscles not atrophying from sitting behind a desk all day, and usually that goes on all year. Even during the winter, I'm still going out there doing something or other, whatever. But yeah.
Well, muscles and stuff.
But I'll tell you this, at work though, it's been catastrophic failures, catastrophic. That was all last week. It was every day I was on the phone from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. with some kind of other major issue, this or that, and all of them going on at the same time. So that was a little silly last week, but it's also good too. That's the thing I think a lot of people don't maybe internalize, these any major catastrophes or what somebody would be like, oh, it's this sales apocalypse or something, it's opportunity too. Those are the times when you can really make a difference in something that you work in.
Yeah.
And so I dig it. It's stressful at the time, and fortunately for me, my whole career has been built on stressful situations. So it's old hat, really. Right?
That kind of sucks.
No, I mean, it did it first, but in the IT world, the more advanced you get, the more responsibility you have, the more technologically challenging it becomes, the more critical, the larger impact, all this stuff. So you do that because that's actually what creates your worth, is how you can handle these critical situations and stuff that come about, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I've moved where I am, man. It's just dealing with more complex, more critical, more disastrous scenarios. That's what I kept doing.
So you basically are the combatant in the apocalypse.
Well, some companies have felt like they were in an apocalypse, and yes, it's you have to. So when you get past the turning the gears phase, where you're not the guy really going to be doing you're more the guy that's kind of leading the teams to do this, then you get to that point where you're the one who's calming the C-level suite of here's what's going on, here's what's going to happen. You're the one laying out here's how you set, here's the expectation you set, this is what's impacting. It's going to be impacted for this. So you're doing a lot more people like management than you are technology management. Really, you're having people do things, and you got to watch and make sure that what you need done is done. But you're managing the expectations of the people that are, actually losing the most money out of everything or impacting it. It's just stuff like that.
Yeah, that's too much stress.
Yeah, but that's how IT works.
I put together doors today.
I know, but I thrive in that stuff, man. I mean, the hairier it is, the better off I'm going to be. That's just how I'm wired.
Well, guess what?
What?
Joe Biden's brother or uncle, I'm sorry, went down in a plane crash and got ate by cannibals.
I wonder if they added seasoning and what did they dry brine it?
Here's my question. His plane went down in the ocean. So did the cannibals put on swim trunks and swim out to his uncle? And
I don't think they needed swim trunks with their like
their grass hula skirts.
Yeah, I think they were fine.
I'm just wondering, right? Another fantastic imaginative yarn spun by our current president to go along with, what the problem in the Civil War was? We just didn't have enough planes.
We just didn't have enough planes. Yep. I mean,
that's just, I had to put that out there because when I heard it, I actually was watching the broadcast when he said it. And when he said it, I almost fell out of my chair. And then he said it again. He repeated the entirety of it again. He didn't just say it once, he said it twice. He was sitting at home, right?
Hey, cannibalism is nothing to fret about here now. I mean, that's a serious topic right there. It is.
As a matter of fact, they fact checked that story, and it was false.
Well,
falsehoods.
He was confused. It wasn't his uncle. It might have been his cousin.
It might have been his nephew, something. Who knows?
I don't know.
Anyway, so let's
Brian,
talk.
we went to the Reformation.
We did.
Reformation War Room,
which wound up being a giant man-filled anti-abortion rally. Almost.
No, it was.
I won't call it a rally. There was no marches and people.
Abolitionists. It was an abolitionist men's call to arms.
Yeah.
Not call to arms in the actual historical sense, but the whole thing was that.
It was.
And okay, so let me say this. For one, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. However, that's not a man-centered issue. Now we're supposed to be the head of the church, the head of the household, and all this stuff. So, in a way, that is, but that's an issue for a lot of the whole family.
Yeah,
to encounter and really to participate in, especially because you're talking about women who you're going to interact with, and you know what, I've been in these situations where it's a lot easier for a woman to communicate with another woman about something like this than it is a man. And I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just saying there's a lot of times that's the case.
I'm not saying that we can't take a stand on it.
No.
I'm saying to gather a group of men together. That's what they say. There's 250, right? That's what he said. And to sing, which I didn't mind the Viking hymns. Those were pretty cool.
Those were cool. I like that.
It just felt awkward, really. Not in a shameful way. It just felt awkward, right? I've since then, the speaker, I've listened to a little bit of what he has to say, and he's a very educated guy, and I agree with a lot of his stances on a lot of things, but it got kind of repetitive a little.
Not a little. He said the same thing half a dozen times.
You can only say the same thing so many times before it becomes the same thing. And I know he was trying to drive a point home and get a point across, and God bless him. He you know, he was very professional and very well spoken. But it just felt like a very awkward place to be.
Well, and I mean, yeah, out of that 250, so the thing about the time and era we live in now, those 250 men there's critical things with manhood that need to be addressed and like encouraged and ironed out in a situation like that.
Yeah.
There's real, you know, masculinity centered things that should be approached and discussed and look, cause I mean, I break down about abortion and think it's horrible. Don't want it to exist, that kind of thing. I also know though that can't happen if our men aren't stepping up to the plate and being the men of God that we need to be. So in my opinion, this is not it. Like I said, theologically, there's nothing wrong with it, but the time's better spent encouraging and lifting up the men in the room about who they are, who Christ is, the message of I mean, that's really where I would do the men's
I think
group
if you want to
thing.
inspire men to do anything about anything, you must first inspire them to be men. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to sit down and have a discussion and tackle any subject anywhere, anytime. Doesn't bother me. But you must understand that masculinity is dying right now.
I mean, it is, but it's. I think it's on the upswing.
It is, but it's still under just full scale attack.
Oh, well, yeah, the attack's
right?
not stopping, but
unfortunately, we haven't righted that situation all the way. Now we're going to go try to right a different situation. I don't necessarily know.
It's not. I mean, look,
that's my stance.
I guess what I'm saying is there's some men who need to step up and be leaders in that type of thing. Yes.
Now, one thing I did agree about that he said was it's any change, and I think this is any change that you want to see coming out of a church, it's got to come from the pulpit. I think that was a very true statement that he made. I really did agree with that, you know, because I feel like, you know, as I go to church with my family, what I still continue to see within the church is are ministers who are afraid to broach certain subjects, and they're afraid because they're afraid they're going to get into some kind of political or social war, which unfortunately, being who I am, it can't be avoided. No. Right. And I feel like we need to start in the pulpit and say, hey, this needs to be a very direct subject that I preach about biblically, right? We don't want to preach, you know, Bob's version, but I think that was a very poignant, and I agreed with that statement when it was made, is that but I put that on any subject, anything. It's got to come from the pulpit.
Well, yeah, it does. But, you know, how are you going to make, like, okay, let's say a husband and a dad is really struggling with this pressure of taking on the responsibilities and the headship of the house and all that stuff, and his wife is frustrated at him because he's not making decisions like he should be, and you know he's going out to the tavern with bar or whatever with his buddies and stuff because he's trying to get away from that kind of stressful situation and stuff. Him not dealing with that first isn't going to help anything. I mean, that's the thing. You're so I'm sure out of that group of men, there was some real issues that could have been.
It's like Jordan Peterson says, clean up your own room.
Clean your room, clean your own mess.
That's your own mess, right?
Yeah. I mean, but
before you start trying to tell other people how to clean up their mess, you got to clean up your own mess. So
I mean, now this could be completely there could be a context for all of this.
Yeah.
Because this is obviously something we drove to
Had some Zaxby's.
We did have Zaxby's.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like this is like a church we've been involved in everything. We've never heard anything from this church.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
this was actually sort of a whim, right? Like you just kind of found this and told me about it, and we just were like, let's go.
You know, actually, no. Well, it was the Holy Nope.
The Holy Nope.
That was the guy I introduced ourselves to outside. What's up, Holy Nope? This wasn't a Holy Nope scenario, by the way. It's not like I would say that, but he's funny and he has some practical, longer form stuff too. But he's got some reels that are kind of hilarious. But anyway, so he was there, and I think that was where I saw it. Was like he posted a thing about it. So that's where we went.
By the way, he had a very groomed mustache.
His mustache is awesome.
His mustache was quite impressive.
It's very impressive. Mustachio.
I'm not sure exactly how to make my mustache grows in like ferret pelt, which is why I don't have one. For some reason, the beard does okay, but when the mustache comes, it's like a ferret pelt. It's just ridiculous.
Well, all mine's so light, it's hard to, it doesn't.
I'm telling you, man, we need to get you like all lined out. You would look very. Right now, you have the beard.
I know. That's what I've had forever.
Yeah.
But, and I like it that way. But I don't. I've been looking, like, again, I'm looking for a barber so I can.
There's one in.
Do that.
There's several I can refer you to. All right, man. Okay. So I think you and I need to put a nail in something. We need to put a nail in this whole Mark Driscoll thing.
Well, unlike the Reformation War Room, I walked in there expecting monster trucks and male pole dancers. And apparently that was already done.
Yeah, apparently they took care of that where Mark Driscoll was.
John Lindell and the James River Church, scenario.
Yes.
So this has been, we're coming to this late because honestly, this is the only time we could record. But also too, it's like, this has been beaten I'm so sick
ever since I brought it up, it's in my feed.
It's just, it's everywhere. But so I can't, well, I guess you have to just in case, but there was a men's conference at James River Church.
Yep. Mark Driscoll.
Pastor John Lindell.
Yeah.
They opened the whole conference up on the Friday night with a monster truck running over some cars or something. And then there was
a topless dude dancing on a pole.
A guy who does it's like a acrobat circus act kind of thing. He comes out, rips his shirt off, does some sword swallowing and on a pole, goes up and down the pole, which it wasn't stripping or anything. But it was weird. But it was weird to have at a men's conference.
Yeah,
okay?
Like I could say, honestly, that's not what I would have wanted at a men's conference.
Nothing was said Friday night. Like they did their thing. And then Saturday morning, I guess, is when Mark Driscoll is a guest speaker. He comes up and the first thing he does was say, hey, what I witnessed was the Jezebel spirit is here in this church last night, right? And then so Pastor John Lindell gets up in the middle of Mark speaking and tells him, no, you're done. Get off the stage.
Yeah.
So then Pastor John gets up and he tries to speak, but there are dudes literally yelling, like screaming and yelling.
Yeah, when I say
it was eruption,
getting booed wasn't even like close. Like
now, here's what I want to say. Now, I've watched all kinds of stuff about this, and really, like here's what I'll say. It is the sensationalism in our social media is insane. Agreed. Like this is nothing. Like really, this is nothing. If we didn't have social media, no one know, and who cares? To be honest, right? But and here's why I say this, because like the James River Church and John Lindell particularly have some really questionable theological teachings. They've had they've had some situations that were like really bizarre and like they don't. And I would say even having a monster truck at your freaking men's conference is kind of bizarre, running around crunching cars. I mean, come on. Like it's such a circus. And look, I think I speak for a lot of men who say, I'm not looking for a flipping circus. I'm looking for the gospel. I'm looking to be encouraged, empowered, and, joined together with like-minded men towards Christ's truth, his way, his life. That's what I want. And I think I speak for like a freaking monster load of people that don't need a damn monster truck.
No.
We need the gospel. We don't need circus acts. But here's the thing. So they're booing him, and what Pastor John says was, this is a Matthew 18 scenario. He didn't come to me. You're supposed to come to me first. No, for one thing, that's wrong. Theologically, that's wrong. That is not a Matthew 18. Pastor John Lindell or James River Church did not sin against Mark. It was a general sin against God, if that's what Mark was calling out. Was it really? Now, here's the question that I want to ask you, Brian.
Okay.
Was it really a sin to have this particular act where he gets up there, does sword swallowing on a pole? Was that actually a sinful thing?
Okay, so I watched it all on YouTube. Did I ever feel like the guy was committing some kind of weird, like, homoerotic sexual act thing going on? No. I felt almost like I was at Cirque du Soleil a little bit, right? I've been there before. It's actually impressive. A sin? No. Utterly and completely senseless shit. I'm sorry I said that. It's just senseless. It's just a bunch of BS, and it shouldn't have happened. It had 0 points. It had zero reason. It had zero rhyme. I think it was utter sensationalism at its most, just at its basest level, right? Like,
it's weird.
It's just weird. It didn't make any sense. Like when I watch the video and I'm watching everything go on, I'm looking around this as I'm going on. I'm like, okay, so is something in the background or the foreground going to make this make sense? Right? Nothing made it make sense. Nothing. Now, you and I discussed this a little bit Sunday, and I've changed my opinion a little bit, and here's why. If Mark Driscoll stayed up all night praying and prayed up until the point where he walked up on stage, and he may have not gotten the answer to his prayer till moments before he walked on stage, I think here's what happened. Pastor Lindell thought that if he kept going, that he was going to call him out personally. I don't think that was going to happen. I think he was literally just, for lack of a better term, because he has a recent book about the Jezebel spirit. I'm not accusing Mark Driscoll of anything, but I'm saying there is a convenience factor, right? We're talking about sensationalism, right? Sell few books, right? And I think that if the pastor would have sat there and allowed Mark to go on, he probably wouldn't have been upset. But on top of that, this is one of those things where if you and I are having a conversation, Reggie, and you say something to me that may seem offensive, I'm not going to get offended until you give me context. Does that make sense? Like you might say something and at first I'll be like, oh, that's harsh. But then I'll wait because you usually give me context, right? If I disagree with something you say, I usually wait for your context because you usually have a good reason for where you're standing, right?
That's true.
But I don't think that Lindell waited for Driscoll to give any context. I think he threw it out there. He got offended for whatever reason. I have no idea because it wasn't offensive. He didn't point fingers. He said the Jezebel spirit was here last night. He didn't say, hey, Pastor Lindell went and picked up the Jezebel spirit at the airport and brought her here. Look at him. He's to blame. He just made a statement. And then I think what's goofier is absolute media tirade that Lindell's gone on since that happened, where he has taken what should already be dead and over with and has continued to kick that can down the road relentlessly. And I think and honestly, from the history of that church and what I've heard from it, he saw an opportunity for exposure and took it.
Okay,
Take that how you will.
I know. I don't disagree with that. At the end of the day, here's what I don't care.
Then why are we talking about this?
We're talking about it because it's weird.
It is weird. The whole thing was weird.
We're talking about it because it's an illustration of how not to have a disagreement.
Yeah.
Because after John Lindell had got up there and men were booming and everything else, like it was shortly thereafter he brought Mark out and they sat down, the two of them, and talked for like 20 minutes and were lovingly trying to work it out. Neither one of them budged on what they were talking about, but at the end of and even some of the stuff John Lindell said during that was weird.
Yeah. Everything that he did through this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so that from listening to people who were at the event, they said that particular 20 minutes was like the most impactful thing they've seen at a men's conference ever, because it showed two men with different opinions talking it out.
Yep.
Okay. That I can get behind.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you have the whole public stuff from Lindell about the like you're saying, with all the phone calls he supposedly had, all these text messages that supposedly have been sent, all this stuff, calling Mark Driscoll to repent, and actually putting it under the Matthew 18 doctrine of church discipline, saying, look, if he doesn't come out to repent, all Christians should like stay away from. I mean, he's really calling Mark for that kind of thing. Yeah. And he's doing this publicly at sermons and online and everything else. So here's what this is the wrong way. And here's why. No, like I can't remember where it talks about being quarrelsome in the New Testament. I can't remember where that is. We're not supposed to be quarrelsome. And this is exactly what this is.
Yeah. I don't even think this is quarrelsome. I'll give you a better term. This is just ignorant and petty.
Well, it's for a this is sensationalism.
Yeah, at its finest.
But also too, the content creators that have been reporting on this stuff are being, this is the whole thing about taglines and headlines and stuff, which I try not, we don't do that. I haven't put up any kind of like sensational nonsense of all of our episodes, even though I know that's how you get more clicks and stuff, because it's just, to me, I think that's petty, and I think it's not being honest in some cases. Now for this, Ruslan, I forgot the name, but Ruslan something. I'll put a link down to a couple of his YouTube stuff because he has a bunch of stuff on it. I watched another one where they had interviewed this. I'll say this though about these big men's conferences. Like the one guy who went there said, but Friday night you had this guy, nobody really paid attention to him, and 500 and something men came up and gave their life to Christ that evening. Okay, listen. You're at a big event. Emotions are
high,
manipulated on purpose to be high.
Yeah.
You have an energy that is there that is quite palpable. Let's just say it. And I've been to these things. I know what it is.
Yeah, so have I.
It's easy to get caught up in the fervor of that and to join in to that without like really understanding what you're doing.
Yeah. You
may think you do, but then, later on, I don't know, like these 500 and something men, well, why they're coming up there. Did they have enough people to like sit down with these? I doubt it.
Well, I would be interested to know, maybe this is something we could study is if 500 men walked up there, what's the percentage that would remain after, 90 days, right? or 6 months or whatever that is, right?
Well, that's what
Like,
I'm
I
saying.
feel like that'd be a very interesting.
I think that's part of.
It's kind of like when you join the gym.
Yeah.
1,000 people join the gym in January. There's 100 people left at the end of May.
Right.
Right. So
that's what I'm talking about. Because it's not. Someone just going to an event might get an idea of like, hey, this is something I want to look into a lot more. I'm really digging on this, and say this is kind of. And at the end of the whole conference, you may be like, yeah, I think this is the truth.
yeah.
And at that point, you might want to say, how can I move? How can I learn more or do something? Sure. But Friday night, after you've had a monster truck and a circus performer and,
A fight,
some warships.
and an
Well, no, not
argument.
Friday night. You didn't have that, but well, you're not going to understand the gospel.
Well,
You know?
here's what I would tell people. The best way I would say this is be contemplative as to what you want, and by contemplative, I mean think it through, do your research. It's easy, man. I've been to some big men's conferences where I feel, there's an emotional pull because there's like this epic speaker and they're really just passionate, and nothing wrong with that, right? Sometimes you need that mountaintop feeling, right? Just to kind of, there's nothing, when we went to see the guy from 13 Hours, it was a mountaintop feeling walking out of that place. That guy's story was amazing. But, just like anything else, if you join out of just emotion, you're likely not to stay.
Yeah.
So my focus would be if you're putting out a calling and people are coming up, I would encourage those people to not press them instantly into becoming quote unquote a Christian. They need to sit down and have an honest conversation. Why are you up here? What are you feeling right now?
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I don't say it's not possible. I mean, during biblical times, we had a lot of instances where a large number of people, like,
yes,
were overwhelmed by the presence of Christ or the disciples, and they were overcome by the teachings and stuff like that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, we look, we have to be in 2024. We have to be a guarded Christian, and I don't mean like things like this can't happen, but we're talking about a large number of people who are who twist anything, who do anything, and sensationalize everything. And
I don't know that necessarily being guarded is the word I would use. I would say, recognize sensational for sensational.
Yeah.
If it's too good to be true, it ain't. Use your common sense. One of the things I've always been able to do is divide the emotion out of it, right? Like, okay, well, this is exciting, but I'm going to take emotional Brian and put him in this box for a minute so that I can figure out exactly what's happening, where a lot of people can't make that divide. So I don't know that I would say guarded so much. Don't guard yourself in that way. Experience what's going on.
Well, no, I don't mean that's not what I mean. I don't mean guarding yourself at the conference. I'm just saying as a Christ follower in 2024, you got to keep both your guard up and have some discernment with things. Guard up being that you things are coming at you.
Yeah, for sure.
That you really need to block. That's what I'm saying.
And that makes sense.
Right? There's context for you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. As I said, he will always deliver context.
Okay, but anyway, look. This is
contemplative beard stroke.
Yeah. I'll just say this for any Christ follower that's listening to this. Understand that normal people are not like this. Understand that this is a mega church doing a mega thing, being sensational, and you have a controversial speaker anyway who's wrote a book on the very thing he's accusing this particular thing to happen. And you have a pastor of this mega church who has
said many controversial things.
Yes.
Many.
Including this woman who grew back 3 toes because they prayed for her and all this stuff, but then wouldn't show any documentation because they said they didn't have to because it was a godly thing and all that stuff.
Yeah. If they're back 3 toes.
Yeah. Like, listen, let me tell you something.
That's good for 7-toed Sally.
Let me tell you something. If I witnessed and I recorded God performing a miracle growing back toes, that stuff would be everywhere.
Yeah. You couldn't keep me from posting it.
No.
Dude, if I just was standing there and it wasn't at church and I looked down and recorded a lady's toes growing back, I'd just post it because that's amazing. Right? Like that's.
I mean, come on.
But I mean, all in all, I think first and foremost, like you said, this is just stupid. This is another example of what I believe to be a distraction of epic proportions. And number two, be grown-ups. Stop acting this way. Lindell, stop blathering on.
Not just that, but like,
let
me tell you something. If God leads you to get up on a stage in front of a huge number of men.
Yeah, there was a ton of dudes there.
And call out a situation, don't get off the stage.
Yeah.
If God says for you to be there, you stand your ground.
Yeah. You don't accept it.
Now, it depends on whatever that is, but he'd already said what he was probably going to say, but like calling out the Jezebel spirit and saying it was an Asher pole and all this stuff. So I have another thing with that too, like Jezebel spirit. I think a lot of people in 2024, I keep saying that, sorry, might not know what that means.
Educate us, Reginald.
Well, to be fair here, I don't know. And I'll tell you why. Jezebel is like a demonic presence of lust and desire.
Uh-huh.
And giving. See, I'm still not convinced about like. Well, okay. Let's go here for a second. When the Bible talks about principalities, it's talking about the demonic powers that rule over certain aspects of our existence.
Sure.
In a way.
Yeah.
God is still sovereign. Don't I'm not going there. But just understand that these are like in other words, it would be like the Jezebel is the demon Jezebel is over, lust and desire kind of thing. The Baal and all that kind of stuff. Okay. I don't have any experience with, and I was talking to my wife about this. I really don't have any experience with a demonic presence, really. Like as far as I can remember, I haven't. I mean, now I could have. Don't get me wrong, but since I've been a Bible beating Jesus freak, I've never encountered a person or a situation where in person, I'm talking like me then right there, sure, that I was like, yep, that's definitely a demonic presence or whatever. So there's that. And so I can't answer this question really honestly, because to me, it's kind of like fairy tale land. It just sounds like even though I know they're talking about principalities and stuff, but I know exorcisms exist. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that there isn't true demon presences and stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in order for me to communicate really what that is, I just haven't experienced it to like really say.
I think a good way to say it would be this. And I'm careful when I use this word because I know what people normally attach this word to. There is definitely a supernatural effect happening right now in the world that is not positive energy driven.
Well, no, I'm not.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I don't know about like the Jezebel or, although the Bible does talk about Jesus encountering men with demons in them. So we don't necessarily have firsthand experience.
We know it's true.
But we do know it.
We know it
happens.
And I'm not saying it. I've seen video that's like legitly, I would say, yeah, that gives me goosebumps. That is definitely a demonic thing going on, right?
Yeah. But you've personally never been a part of it.
Yeah, like
neither have I.
Now I maybe have, and I just didn't know it at the time, right? But since I've been like really awake in my journey with Christ, I'll say that. And I think partly because they, when you are actually walking the path and you're trying, and you are a student of of Christ's teachings, and you're trying to apply that every day, they don't want to be around you. Now,
Actually, I don't think that's true at all.
Well, no, here, I'll get to that. I know what you're going to say. They're going to try to get in your way other means, right? You're actually an enemy of that, and they're going to try to derail your path. You put temptation into your way, throw sickness at you. They'll try to deceive somebody who's right, in your vicinity or whatever. But they're not necessarily going to
like possess you.
They can't. Well, they can't.
Yeah,
it's not possible. The Holy Spirit and demonic stuff aren't compatible. So if you're Holy Spirit filled, you can't. Now, do I get like weird whispers in my ear, like coming in my thoughts? That's like weird. Yeah. That are like vile. Yeah. All the time. And I know what that is. But what I'm saying is, like, I have not been in a situation where I knew that physically manifested demonic spirit, or like there was like some person who was possessed. I haven't had that.
Reggie is not going to star in The Conjuring 4.
Well, let me tell you something. If I did, I don't think I'd be that scared, to be fair.
Honestly, man, as much as I've been through in my life and as many stupid things as have happened and as much as I went through as a kid, that is the least of my fears. If it is a fear, it's the least of the fears that I have, right?
Okay. I have every faith that I'm covered in his blood already. I don't feel any danger from that scenario because I'm already taken care of.
Yeah.
It's the same way where, like, whenever you see and I've seen, if you watch any of it or even get to be present at an exorcism, they're always yelling, which is weird. I always think that's odd. Why would you yell? I know they are. The movies sensationalize stuff a lot, but there is a lot of screaming from usually what I see. Like, you don't have to. It's not you that's doing anything anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll just say that. The whole thing about that, I don't think it was. See, that's the thing. His act, Alex, and I can't remember his name now. It's very much.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what his name is.
It's very much like a circus act. It's not. It's like it's not really
Cirque du Soleil. That's what it reminded me.
Yeah,
of. It's like going to Vegas and sitting down in the amphitheater and watching Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, and I say why it's not wise to put into a men's thing is because men aren't mature enough for that. It's. I don't think they are, dude.
Well, I would say that the majority of them aren't.
Well, yeah. They're gonna.
I won't say that all of them aren't.
I didn't say all.
I would say that the majority of, especially the men who've never experienced an event like that. Woo. But anyway. Well, now that we've driven a nail into that, let's move on.
Indeed. Let's hear from our sponsor.
Oh, that's a good idea. EMTCC. Take it away.
Edwards Managed Technology Computer
Consulting.
Go now. Are you a small business or entrepreneur looking to get more out of your online presence? Technology is ever changing, and with more and more people spending most of their time on screens, it's important to have your brand out and about, getting the most exposure possible.
Worried about having a big budget for website design or social media?
At Edwards Managed Technology Computer Consulting, we cater to every business or solo entrepreneur's individual needs to come up with a plan that works for your product and your wallet.
Interested in learning about how we can help you manage your online presence so that you can spend more time doing what you love to do instead?
Visit www.emtcc.net to make an appointment, or give us a call at 1-888-551-2770.
Mention R&B Talks and get 10% off of your initial appointment.
Remote and on-site options are available. Thank you, Edwards.
And we're back.
Now, along that line we were talking about.
Okay.
Have you noticed the increase in number of like interruptions or things happen during services or preaching?
Yes, including someone getting stabbed repeatedly. Yes, it is very much a problem at this point, right?
I will say Bishop Mar Mari Emmanuel.
Yes.
He's an Assyrian preacher in, I think it's Australia.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Could be wrong,
I don't remember the
so.
church he's in, but yeah, he was giving a talk about, and I don't even remember what the talk was, but yeah, this dude just comes up.
He just screamed Allah Akbar, ran up there and stabbed him like 47 times, man. Like, it's crazy. 47 might be an exaggeration. I'm not sure how many times they stabbed him, but he probably stabbed him several times.
But Mari Emmanuel, though, has not shied from anything of the biblical truth. He's called out Muhammad. He's called out Buddha. He really does cling to the biblical text from what I can gather. Has spoken a lot of truth, and that I think that's made a lot of people mad. He's got quite a following.
Yeah. Well, I look at it at the current point we're in. I feel like all of the things that we were fighting about over the last 2 years have kind of started to slow down. The steam's kind of let out of the locomotion, so to speak. So now there has to be something else. And I feel like this is the something else, right? This one kind of bugs me, and here's why. I live in America where we have freedom of speech, or are supposed to. People like Jordan Peterson, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro have all been ran off of campuses, ran out of venues, picketed, all because they carry a differing opinion than what the person next to them has. And I completely understand that. You don't like what they have to say, and I feel like we're ground zero for the spread of it, because now you're seeing it pop up in Australia, Britain, all these places. It's like a virus. There are people attacking people on the street who are, acting in the best interest of people who are in need of help. I watched a video recently where a guy is literally handing out cold bottled water and sandwiches on the street. He's handing them out. It's a church in Oklahoma. I can't remember the name of the church. 2 quote unquote LGBTQ activists come up, kick over his stand, throw his food in the garbage, and then assault him. For whatever reason, I have no idea. And his friend stands there, which, first off, that kind of bothered me. Dude, put the phone down. Help your friend.
Yeah.
He's catching a beat down. Help your friend. But it wasn't staged. You could tell the guy was scared to death. He was a young man. He was probably, if he was 16, 17, 18 years old, he was lucky. They were literally out there handing out food and water to the homeless. And these 2 quote unquote activists came up, and they didn't give him a reason. They didn't say anything to him. They walked straight up, kicked the table over. And the reason you knew they were LGBTQ activists, because they both had shirts on that said so. They tore into him, beat him up while his friend videotaped it. Dude, come on, bro. And I can't remember ever the details, but because I watch 1,000 stupid videos all week long when I'm doing research, and I see all this ignorant stuff, but it's like a cancer, and it's just spreading this violent. Okay, we couldn't beat you with words. Now we're going to literally beat you.
The only thing, I mean, look, I'm really not worried about the LGBTQ mafia, to be honest.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about if you are a Christian if you are a man or a woman of faith, and you are out in the world simply attempting to be kind to people, what ungodly reason would anyone have? LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Nazi, whatever you are. What is the dude was giving out sandwiches and water, man, to people who were starving. What is your problem?
I mean, look, there's definitely like there's a reason why a lot of people are saying having all these end time prophecy things, because there's been an escalation in those type of things.
Well, but here's the argument though. Here's the argument. Has there been an escalation, or do we just have better access to when it happens?
Well, I mean, I'm as far as like what we're seeing from everywhere, there's been an escalation from the generalized thing.
Yeah.
To say that is this worse than any other time, though?
Hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, because we do have more availability of information and everything's recorded.
Yeah. I mean, you can't go anywhere without anything being recorded.
No.
Right. So,
I mean, I know I'll say this, dude. Like, look, there is some indications about when Christ will return. There's some trends, like movements that will happen, and you see, and so, but they're not given in detail for a reason in the Bible, but it does say there's supposed to be some things. So when people see like a rise in violent acts or the dissident between, different cultures is rising, or, that kind of thing, then it always leads to that.
well, I mean, a perfect example would be, in my opinion, wholly the most ridiculous thing going on right now is this whole anti-Israel garbage, right? They murdered people on purpose. They did horrible things.
So I guess most people don't understand it. They couldn't have the actual recorded stuff they did put on the news to look at because it was so bad.
Yeah. I mean, it was horrible.
Like, it was literally like
pregnant women with their babies cut out of their belly.
It was all kinds of like really horrific, I mean, unbelievable
just
things.
Unnecessarily evil and violent.
Yes.
Right?
Now, okay, look.
And that's not to say that unnecessarily evil and violent things don't happen every day, but not to that scale, right? Where it's just this mass. And then for these people to come out and say, oh, well, it's Israel's fault. What? Those people that died had no hand in anything political that Israel did. How can you, there is zero justification for that level of murder and violence. Zero.
Against civilians.
Against anyone.
That horrendous thing. But I'm just saying, like, these are people that don't have anything to do with any of that stuff.
And they stand on this, the Gaza. No, nobody cares. They murdered people. They didn't just murder people. They picked the most heinous, vile, and horrific manner of doing it and did it.
Lots of torture. There was lots of.
There were beheaded children and.
it was really gross.
There were things that went on that you will never be able to give me a justification as to why.
Well, but it's not just that though. Look, that whole region has been in turmoil for as long as there's been the region.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
It has. And this conflict goes back biblical times, dude. And it's like at this point there's just stupid. Like, there's no reason to do what Hamas does. Hamas has done all kinds of other. Look, there is no rational intellectual reason to support Hamas. Let me say that. Absolutely none. They are appalling.
Yeah.
What they do, what they stand for, what they said is appalling.
Yeah.
Okay, Israel's not perfect,
No.
but they have never called for like the extinction of a whole people.
No.
And actually said, I hope they all come back to Jerusalem so that we'll have one place to kill them all. And that's Hamas talking about the Jews.
Yeah.
No, that's still their stance. That's still where they are. No, there's that. Look, I'm not saying Israel's perfect by any means. I'm not saying that they haven't done things like wrong or whatever. But there is no basis for supporting Hamas.
But I think what you're seeing, going back to what we originally started talking about, was the reason you're seeing more interruptions and more attacks is just simply because, and this kind of ties into the whole Mark Driscoll thing. I think the only way that the dangerous people keep the dangerous things in the public eye is to do things publicly, which is sensationalism.
But again, this is a whole point of this whole podcast we do.
Yeah.
Men deciding to raise up and be men will stop all of this stuff.
I agree.
If you live so in other words, so if you take an extension, let me just throw this example. Let's say there's a movement for XYZ that's totally immoral. And that's coming in, you see it coming into our, like it's moving towards, it's being passed in communities and states and stuff. It reaches your community. Who stops it from getting implemented or whatever? And then I'm not saying anything particular, but let's just say it's some immoral, unreal thing that's now societally acceptable that's coming in there being legalized. That if the men in the community have held their ground, are being men, are being leaders, that will never be allowed in that community. It doesn't matter what happens everywhere else. That's the truth.
Agreed.
And this is the thing. It doesn't take that. It doesn't really take that much. It just takes men to be men. And it's not like you have to like form a militia. That's not what I'm even talking about. You just have to have a freaking courageous stand up attitude and have principles that you stand up for.
Yeah.
And you don't bow down to the cultural norms.
Yeah.
I mean, look, my family here is not going to participate in whatever it is that is not according to God's word. It's plain and simple. If someone else in my community says the same thing, I will back them up. And there's probably a lot more of me out there in this community that will do the same thing.
Especially in our community, I would say.
Right.
We live in a very
well. We're the part, but that's also why I'm here. Is because I'm with like-minded individuals by a lot.
But this just goes back to what I've always said is that I believe in America. I believe in everyone's right to choose how they live.
Those states' rights. There's here's another thing that brings up, Brian. Have the Convention of States? Okay, that's been a movement that started back in,
yes.
I forgot who did it, but it was 2013, and it's actually been increasing in its viability and interest. And what the Convention of States does is says the states actually rise up and they say, no, we are no longer the federal government is corrupt. It is, and it needs to be tore down and rebuilt, and the states will have all the power, will be reverted to, the power structure gets shifted. Okay. Which is what it should be anyway. But anyway, That's a big movement now for a reason. And I totally agree with it. Like the way that this is why we have states, and people don't understand this. We're a republic of states for a reason, so that people who wanted certain things or wanted to live a certain way can go live in a certain state. That's what they were doing. Mm-hmm. You have the freedoms need to exist, and we need to be free to do that. Just like when people accuse Christians of being so like bigots or whatever, all because we don't like, but we say, you're free to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with it.
Well, I mean, even let's just take Christian out of it for a second. As an American, I have a right to agree or disagree. And I have a right to choose to live the way I want to live, the way that you choose to live the way you want to live. So if I don't recognize your behavior, it doesn't mean you're invalid or I don't validate you. It just means that I see the behaviors that you invest yourself in, the things that you want to be involved in, and I say, not me.
Well, it's like cannabis, right? I don't partake in anything of that nature. I don't do any of that. Never have. Don't care. It's not concerning me, right? It's a non-issue for me. Whatever. So if somebody wants to partake in that and have that be legal, all right. If they want to have it illegal, whatever. I don't care. It's just, it doesn't matter. And the same thing goes with there's a lot of people who don't drink at all, don't drink alcohol at all, and think it's really not a good thing for you to do. Well, that's cool as long as you don't freaking begrudge and insult people who do.
Yeah.
And even if you do, fine. But it's not up to you to make the call. Look, I'm just saying we have freedom is paramount. We have to have the freedom to do what we need to do. We have to be free to be responsible.
Yep.
You don't take that away. If you take that away, it ruins things. And again, this all goes back to this whole argument about, all these idiot young kids in school saying socialism is so great. There's never been a socialism government that survived.
It is a 100% failure rate.
Yeah, it's always failed.
Well, and it also goes back to this, I'm going to live my truth. I'm sorry, there is no your truth.
No.
There's not any my truth. There's just the truth. And now, if you want to use that as an excuse to create your own world where you do whatever you feel like doing, go ahead. But I'm never going to look at you and go, you live your truth. That it's just not it's not a thing. It's made up. And see, that's, I think, what the argument is in all this is this current crop of individuals honestly believe in their heart of hearts that they can just make up their own reality. And that if they do that, that removes them from the responsibility of life. And that, Reggie, is the scariest thing to me.
They're installing litter boxes in the schools, Brian.
Well, but I'm not even just talking about that specifically.
I know, but I'm
talking about, let's say you wake up tomorrow morning and you go, you know what? Today, I'm a Smurf. I'm going to live like a Smurf. I'm going to sing the Smurf song. I'm going to wear white pants and a white hat. I'm going to call my wife Smurfette. I'm going to treat my kids like my little Smurflings. And until I feel like not being a Smurf, everything I do is going to be as a Smurf. I am going to look at you and go, you are a moron. You are not a Smurf.
I'm not saying that we're talking about that particular thing.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I get what you're saying, but I mean, it's this detachment from reality that scares me.
Yeah.
It's this, and the thing is I can't track it down. Like, where did we suddenly decide that we are allowed to stand outside of reality?
No, okay. Let me. The KGB did a great job of infiltrating our institutions back in the 60s.
Yeah, they did. Very, very good. Very well.
And their whole mission was to dismantle that and start teaching the rhetoric of Marxism and everything else.
Yes.
To infiltrate it. So that bled into everything from there.
Yeah.
Now it takes time. So we're reaping that now because the institutions have been corrected. Yeah. They've been just left to do their thing.
And they've deteriorated further since.
Oh yeah. It's crazy talk, right? But also too, like, I think this goes back to what you were talking about, how Joe Rogan said, if I was the devil, you'd do these things too.
Yeah.
And what was that radio host who was famous? Paul Harvey, right?
Yeah.
Paul Harvey did a whole thing back in, I forgot when that was, long time ago. He said the exact same thing though. He gave this whole precipice, if he was the devil, he'd do this. Yeah. It's exactly what happened, right?
Yeah.
So while to kind of get to this point, while I would say I have no experiences with a direct demon in front of me that's materialized or like a demonically possessed individual, there are demonic forces working on the earth as we speak and have been for years to move us towards a where less of men are dropped down, the nuclear family is dissolved. We have a divisive culture that they can rule with impunity.
Yeah.
That's what this is. But that's where it comes from. This is all back when, and you saw an escalation of all this during the Obama administration.
Yes. Kind of. I think during the Obama administration, the gloves were taken off.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, cool. We now have the reign to do what we want.
Yeah.
Here's the changes we're going to start making.
But here's a great example of how it created chaos within their own ranks. For 2 years, the Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and still couldn't get anything done because they had created so much chaos and so much demagoguery and all the things that were going on that they couldn't straighten out their own mess long enough to get these things implemented.
Okay. Let me say this real quick. I don't claim myself to be right or left. I think that dichotomy is just, I think it's wrong.
Yeah, it's just stupid.
But I'm adamantly against the elite left opinion about where that should go, about where the nation should go, the mindset. I think it's borderline evil, that. And I think the far right wing, and I don't mean far, I shouldn't say not far, like if you're looking at a spectrum, I mean the actual party itself, like the leaders of the right party are the same. They're getting bought off and sold, and they're just doing whatever makes them money and everything else. So you end up with a system that really doesn't go anywhere on purpose. It's designed that way. So politically, what I'll say about, because I don't want to get into a political thing. Do I think there is spiritual warfare happening in the political arena? Yes. But am I going to call anything out as being like a demonic thing? Not except for the dismantling of the family. I think there's some things that you could say, yeah, that's probably got some kind of edge to that. The nuclear family being lessened, the masculinity being attacked, abortion rights being raised up.
I'll say minor attracted.
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
yeah,
there's some situations
that's evil.
Yeah, you can say, you can point these out and go, yeah, that has to be coming from an evil place.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's why I'm still stuck on this, man. It's like the reason why we're here. Right now, I'm nowhere close to Washington, D.C. Right? I'm not sitting in the congressional meetings. I'm not writing bills. I'm not, voting on that kind of stuff. But I do have elected officials.
Yeah. Who you can't access.
So all I'm saying is, like, the more we become men of God that look at the entire gospel, that don't bend to the cultural norms, the more we will make change happen.
Agreed.
So regardless of what, like, prophecy or stuff or crazy, I mean, if you're a Christian right now and you follow a bunch of stuff, you watch a bunch of Christian stuff, you're going to see things all across the spectrum of weirdness. Some of it's cool, some of it's not. And I mean, I just encourage everybody to just make your family, yourself, the most Christ-like you can be. Act upon that and stand on your biblical principles with unrelenting force.
I know.
We're R&B Talks.
Peace.
See you.